It's about 20 past 9 in the morning on the 18th of September 2018. My recovery is going well. Thank you for all your kind words. Still going to be the end of the year before I'm back properly. However, I will be back on the road by mid-October. Now, conspiracy theories. I've done a few celebrity readings recently of people who have been dead for more than 20 years. And what has really surprised me is the number of people who have contributed onto the blog and said, oh yeah, they were killed by so-and-so, or they were killed by so-and-so. It's all this idea of not being willing to accept that people die by accident or of natural causes or by their own hand. For example, first one I did was the horoscope of Vincent van Gogh. Now, yeah, there's a new movie out, and there's one or two anecdotal stories of Van Gogh actually being killed by young kids and holding the blame upon himself to cover up for them. Doesn't add up. This is stuff that's only been around 20 years. For the last X number of years, for the last century, it's been accepted worldwide that he killed himself. He shot himself in the chest, and within 2 days of that he died. Now, secrets, humans aren't very good at keeping secrets, collectively or individually. Individually it's easier. And the astrology of Van Gogh's chart clearly show that yes, he was in such a state of manic extreme depression, absolutely extreme, at the time he died. I'm absolutely convinced he died by his own hand. Marilyn Monroe. A lot of people say, oh, she was killed by the Kennedys. She was killed by the CIA. She died having ingested 5 times the lethal limit of barbiturates, phenobarbital. She died in her bedroom. There was someone in the house all the time, the housekeeper. And to the housekeeper's knowledge, there was no one else visiting her that night. Some people have said the housekeeper did it. Other people said the Kennedys did it. Her horoscope had such a strong plutonic element at the time of her death. And having examined her chart and seen that she was little girl lost, she felt unloved, she was abandoned and neglected and abused. She just wanted out. There was no conspiracy with Marilyn Monroe. It astonished me when I did the reading on Jimi Hendrix, when some people just turned around and said, oh, he was killed by the music mafia because he was going to go independent and they wanted his profits. To which I thought, what rubbish. No, his horoscope clearly showed that he was in a state of narcosis, psychological and physical, and that his death was accidental. I've just done a video on Princess Diana. That's going to unleash the conspiracy theorists. I used to think that she was assassinated. I'm not so sure now. I'm really not. I used to think that the chance of her death not being an accident was around 40%. Now I think it's about 15%, having studied the astrology. So what is it that makes people someone a conspiracy theorist? Inevitably, one has to look at the aspects to Pluto in a chart, because, especially in a younger person's chart or in someone who has not undergone some type of psychological self-development in some shape or form, whether it be through therapy and counselling or through trauma and crisis or through self-actualisation and self-development. But anybody with difficult squares or oppositions or sometimes even conjunctions to Pluto does have an inherent capacity to be more paranoid, phobic, and scared of the unknown, the unknowable, than the majority of other people. Obviously not all people with aspects to Pluto are like this, but it does carry the capacity for this. And I think that Pluto, because it represents the underworld, the dark, is the single most common factor in people who are phobic or paranoid. Fear is when you know what you're scared of. Phobia is when you know that you're scared but not what of. Paranoia is the persecution complex. To a certain extent, people with difficult placings, difficultly aspected planets in either Scorpio or the 8th house can also exhibit these tendencies, but this is again represented by Pluto. It's also my opinion. Now, look, I'm an old boy now, right? I used to be a radical. I really did. I was an anarchist. I was a rebel. I was tying myself to trees, nuclear power stations, you name it. I did it. But this was in the 70s, 80s, maybe early 90s. These days, I'm too old for that, so I use words. And when I was in my 20s and 30s and 40s, I really saw Big Brother everywhere. But then I grew up. Now, it may be that I've just matured with age and become a moderate and too mild, and I've closed my eyes and I'm not seeing the world the way it really is. Or it may be that I am seeing the world the way it really is, and that actually there's far less conspiracy theories and conspiracies out there than the many people like to think there is. Humanity's simply not that clever to create long-term, large-scale conspiracies over a long period of time, except in isolated cases. And inevitably, someone talks. Secrets always come out, unless they're kept by an individual. A secret shared is a secret public. So I think that most conspiracy theories are just basically imagination. But please note my use of the word most. Just when it seems I'm dissing conspiracy theorists, there's one or two things that are just too extreme to be anything but. For example, anyone who thinks that 9/11 was planned by a bunch of Arabs living in caves in Afghanistan, well, very limited imagination. If you want to find a proper conspiracy theory, look no further than 9/11. And yes, I do have a fairly difficult semi-square from the Sun to Pluto in my chart, but I've also done a lot of psychology in my life. So yeah, if you want to indulge in conspiracy theories and get paranoid and think that the world's out to get you, yeah, fine, if that's what really floats your boat. But I did that for 20 years, and you know what? It's pretty soul destroying. So it also buys in to the phobia and fear that certain power blocks are trying to rule the world with. The more we keep people scared and fragmented, the easier it is to govern them. The last thing power blocks want is people to turn around and become integrated, assimilated, wholesome and self-loving. And yet that's exactly the way that the world is going to recover and become healed. So don't buy into the paranoia and the conspiracy theories. Just smile at people and love them. And I know it sounds simplistic, but it does work. Catch you later, world. Bye.